What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Scratch Agency Podcast, hosted by Scratch Agents for Scratch Agents. My name is Stephen Turnbull, founder of T5 Insurance Services in Clinton, New York. I'm joined by my co-host today, the one and only, you already know, hold your applause, Mr. Shawn Fitzgerald, founder of Sound Harbor Insurance in Long Island, New York. Ladies and gentlemen, this show is brought to you by Hawksoft, your family-owned and operated agency management system serving independent agencies with teams from 1 to 300 plus employees. Brad, an agency owner in Minnesota, says, we love Hawksoft, we love the people and the product, and we couldn't live without it. We got a super exciting episode, Shawn.
Is that my man Brad Bolt? Is that Brad Bolt in Minnesota? Come on
Brad
now.
Come on. Is there another Brad in Minnesota? I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't know. I got to start, Shawn, with something just top of mind. Just go anywhere, but I'll keep it to the show. Do us a favor, if you're listening to this and you've gotten value from this. I don't think we've ever asked this, and I'm going to do it right now. The day was Thursday, February 5th of 2026. Hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. Follow us on Spotify. Hit the Apple Podcast. Follow whatever it is. It does help us from getting out there to getting more people. The more people we can get in this movement, the more people we can get in the community, the more people that we can help all of us rise together. So please, if you're listening to this, do us a favor. And, if you're like, I can't take that much content and you have to unfollow Shawn to follow Scratch Agency, that's fine. That's fine. You have to
Can I say
off.
something too? So do all that, but just share it with somebody. Like, take those links, your preferred platform, and just share it with somebody, right? Actually, I drop your show on Reddit all the time. I'll reference it in DMs with people. Like, people call me just for my services, and like they're scratching early. I'm like, you need to go listen to these guys' show, right? And I'll send them email links, right? Share it. So everybody else, you should do that too.
I appreciate you saying that. Just share it, everybody. That's all we're asking. That's it. Share
Episode
the damn
over.
thing. All right. Hey, listen, we're super excited. We got our friend Colby Allen, VP of Consulting and Valuations for Agency Brokerage.
Yes.
Colby, did I say that right? All right, so that means your LinkedIn's accurate. Just a heads up. But we're super excited to have him back. Shawn, we are episode 160 and change. Last time we've had a good chat with our friend Colby was episode 39.
Wow.
Back in the day when you and I had matching Beats headphones by Dre because we thought that was cool. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Are they as cool
I
as
went through
Shawn's
too many
bullet
headphones.
glasses?
Yeah, that's all right.
Okay.
No,
They're better. They're so much better.
That's something you won't see us matching, but that's a different podcast. That's for next week. Give a little teaser there. Colby, how you doing,
I have two little kids. Business is exploding, which is fantastic. And it's been cold in Louisiana. So I know y'all define cold differently than I do. But if I don't make a joke about the weather on the podcast, I feel like I'm not doing my job.
That's right. Well, so about 100 episodes in, Shawn called me one day and was like, hey, can you just stop talking about the weather? In the beginning?
True story.
And I was like, well, listen, the people want to hear it. But listen, Colby, Louisiana cold. I'll be honest with you. I don't want to hear it. All right. Louisiana cold. Come on. Shawn and I are up here freezing our tails off. Let me introduce, Ciara Gravier. Yeah. You and Ciara got to get a text message thread going and start talking.
Well, most of my team
cold
is also in Florida, so we already talk about that. But
Ciara,
yeah, it's
all right. So you guys get a little southern cold chat, and Shawn and I will focus on the real cold up here. All right. Colby, do me a favor. For people who haven't listened to episode 39 and need to go back and listen to episode 39, where we specifically talked about your first hire, what that should look like and all that. For people that are meeting you for the first time, give us that 60-second elevator pitch, who you are, what you do, all that, and then we'll talk about a specific topic.
My name is Colby Allen. I am VP of Consulting and Valuations with Agency Brokerage. We are a sell-side mergers and acquisitions firm that solely works in the insurance industry. So since 2007, 2008, have specifically been a specialist to do mergers and acquisitions for independent agencies. A couple things here and there, right, that might be really adjacent to that. But for the most part, we've represented over 500 deals for owners that are going through that process or consulting on those people that go through that process. Over 3,000 valuations. I don't know if there's another firm that might have done as many valuations as we have. If not, there's only a handful. And so when it comes to expertise in that space, I think we're the best, which is why I'm here. I'll just say that. In short, myself, I do consulting with independent agencies, either on financial management, strategy, anything to do with organization of the agency as you are either trying to grow, get over hurdles, just kind of figure out where you are. Just general consulting around all that stuff. I've got 12 plus years in industry. I worked in a very large agency in finance operations and M&A. Worked at a carrier for a couple of years doing special projects in the agency relations department. And then the last 2.5 almost years have done independent consulting with agencies, trying to take all the things that I've touched and seen and worked on and managed projects to help you guys try to figure out what does it actually take to get to that big boy level, right? So if that's what you want to do, the plans aren't hard, but as you guys talk about constantly, right, it's actually doing the work between where you are and where you want to be.
Yeah. Colby, what's only because I know the specialties, mergers and acquisitions, before we go into the topic I wanted to go into, what is like the most common mistake that you see in that M&A space, specifically for like newer agencies? Is there any like one thing that stands out?
Oh.
Or just merge with somebody else, or, you know?
I mean, there is no like very easy answer, but I mean, I told you guys I got on this call like fired up because I had a conversation before. Expectations are huge. Like anything in life, relationship, friendships, it doesn't matter. If you go into it with the wrong expectations, you're going to set yourself up for disappointment. And so either working with a good advisor, getting a good mentor, right, understanding the process, even if you're not the professional in that process, having the general understanding of how it works helps you participate in it so much better.
Gotcha. So like having that third party to like help ask the right questions to avoid those issues.
Yeah, because as you know, when you actually get into the nitty gritty of certain things, you realize there's either way more detail in certain things. There might be certain things that you may not have thought of that are very important, or there might be things that you put a lot of emphasis on that are important but may not be as significant. And so like just setting expectations for the process is critical to actually winning the process.
Gotcha.
This is not related to what I want to talk about. Before we go into it, I'm going to ask a different question.
This is the problem when you talk to Colby. It spirals.
Around, I'm trying to think of a different way to word it, but like folks that you see are doing it incorrectly, whatever that is, right? In that bucket, let's just put them in. How much of that can be solved by just good, honest, straightforward communication?
A lot of it. Like pride is like the cardinal sin, right? Pride for a lot of people, like making assumptions or having too much confidence, it just makes you blind to so many things. Or I'll say reference a conversation I just had with somebody, like the things that are important, you're not seeing the right way. And so being able to take a step back, either have somebody else give you a different perspective, or maybe have a conversation around how you should approach something, can make a massive difference.
Yeah, I could see that. Colby, from the financial standpoint, a lot of the listeners are newer agencies. I'd say some scratch and some like 5 years or less running the agency. Scratch Plus. Yep, Scratch Plus. What are, from a financial standpoint, listen, we hear all these things, Reagan's best practices, 55% of your payroll should be allocated based off the revenue. But like a lot of that I feel like isn't realistic for like somebody just starting out, because chances are you're probably putting more towards marketing. Your selling expenses are a little higher. Things are all a little, they're all out of whack, so to speak, when your growth is like insane the first couple of years. So like, how do you properly advise somebody in that situation, since it is like hard to budget percentage wise based off of like a best practice? Sense. Does that make sense?
I'll even refer to and give a shout out. So Reagan's best practices report is a fantastic resource. Like, don't knock on it at all. But to your point, if you look at the smaller category of under 1.25 million, I think the average for that group tends to bounce around 700,000 to 800,000 in annual revenue. So yes, exactly. For a scratch agency that may not be directly relevant based on where you are and what you're doing, it's definitely good data. Like, you should look at it and have conversations, but yeah, it may not be where you are exactly today. So then this is a genuine answer. When I'm consulting with somebody, my first couple questions are going to be around what's your identity and what do you want to do. I mean, there isn't necessarily maybe a right or wrong way to do something unless you don't know where you want to go. I always quote Ben Franklin, but he says, "Those who fail to plan to fail." Right? That's kind of like the idiom.
You can't hit
hit a target you're not aiming
can't
at.
see.
And so,
Hey.
I mean, I like philosophical, like religious examples too. But like even people talk about like in Christianity or like religion, whenever you sin, right, or you do something against God's will, the actual translation of that word is to miss the mark. And so, like when archers or like somebody's aiming at something and you miss the mark, well, were you aiming properly? Were you looking at the right target? Right? Like, do you have your sight set in the right place? And so, when you're first starting out, or you get to the point of Scratch Plus, honestly, I work with people and come up with a strategic plan and craft your identity. Who do you want to be? And then you can kind of break down the parts on, are you going to be a sales or marketing focused agency where you're buying leads or setting up funnels, or you're going to be a producer driven agency where you're paying commission for people to go out and hunt and bring stuff in. Again, there isn't necessarily a right or wrong way unless you're doing something illegal or unethical, but it's know who you are, and that helps you set a plan for getting the progress or making traction in that direction. Unless you might take risk you may not need to take, but that plan should include, especially early on, if you need certain level of compensation yourself, we'll deliberately make that decision and evaluate that at different levels. So that, I mean, the biggest stall for most people in a lifestyle agency is they get to that 250, 300, 500,000 in revenue, maybe a little bit more. And their lifestyle creep has got dependent on that 50% margin where they're taking everything out to fund their second house and buy the camper and all that stuff. Well, when you talk about reinvesting, being able to hire somebody, well, you got to sell your camper, you might have to sell your second house, right? So if you set your own expectations as part of that plan, that's also paramount, right? So making sure that if you want to grow. If you want to be a lifestyle agency, do it. Just do it intentionally.
Can we dive deeper into that part of finding out who you want to be? Because I think the people that we've talked to, Shawn, through the podcast, I mean, I would say in the first like 3 years, it's kind of difficult to see what that is you want to be, right? You haven't got a taste for the renewals. You haven't got a taste for managing the team. You haven't got a taste for insert here at what's at a bigger level, right? Unless maybe you've had that in a past life or whatever. But I think that's interesting. When you're sitting down with people, take us through, if you can, just deeper on like how you maybe help somebody try to figure that out, and then what that means from them from a planning standpoint. Does that make sense?
I think many people or most people who start an agency are entrepreneurial minded. And so I don't say that conversation usually not difficult, but a lot of people have a general vision on what they want to do in 3, 5, maybe 10 years. It could be a revenue mark. It could be a staffing mark, right? There are ways to kind of have certain targets that you can then back down and deduce, okay, well, how do we get there? You don't have to like fully, even like when you go through the process of defining like your ideal customer, right? You might have a very specific narrow focused customer profile, or it could be as general as we do personal lines in these markets and these specific products, right? So there can be a spectrum. But in general, the hard part for a lot of people is just actually starting with just setting a goal, period. A lot of people just start like, I'm going to conquer the world. Well, how? Yeah. Boil the ocean, right, is the phrase a lot of people say. So it can be, first step is just let's come up with a couple, 2, 3, just general goals. And then you can take that next level. Okay, well, not even hit that benchmark, but like what might even be steps to get to that benchmark. And there are, to your question, Stephen, there are ways that you can evolve over that time. Your family needs might change. Your hires and who you hire might evolve and influence how you do that plan. So it's not to say you have to like set a rigid plan and then just go straight up that one path. But having some general direction on what you want to do helps you maybe pull in some of the pieces that put that together.
100%. I always think it's funny. I talked to an agent yesterday about this, but I always think it's like what's your annual goal, right? From a revenue standpoint. And then what do you need to do on a daily basis to hit that?
Yeah.
That's it. You know? And it's like, I feel like a lot of it can be boring and mundane, right? Some of the, like, at the end of the day, does anybody want to do 25 cold calls a day? No. But is that going to get you to hit your goal?
Right.
Oh, yeah. You know, so sometimes you just need to know the action you need to take. But to your point, you won't know what action you need to take unless you know what that bigger picture is. And at T5's point, I think it's a good question, because I love when people are like, "Oh, what do you want to do with the agency when it's all over?" I'm like, I don't know. Every couple of years, I'm changing. You know, things are changing. Kids,
Right.
you can't predict what's going to happen, right? But you can sure as hell project out a 1-year goal, at least on a minimum, which will then give you the daily activities you need to do. You know. So I always, like, if I'm ever feeling overwhelmed, or I'm talking to an agent that feels overwhelmed, and I always bring it back to that, like, annual goal, daily activity. This don't overcomplicate it, you know?
Let's talk about benchmarks, and we've talked about this on the show between Shawn and I. But I'd like, Colby, you to provide some insight on it and maybe dig a little deeper. Like, there's all these benchmarks out there of when you hit this much premium, you should hire this
I like where
role.
you're going.
When you hit this much blank, you should do this, you know? And I think it was like a year ago, Shawn and I were having a conversation offline just about this, right? And we were like, hey, we should get on a call and like just look at like our numbers last month, right? And just and we used this as a perfect example for two reasons. Shawn, maybe before Colby answers this, you can jump in because you know right where I'm going with this. Two reasons. One, like, how much different is the market to that? And the other, I just forgot, but there was two. So my point is, like, 50,000 in new premium for me looks much different for Shawn. His market, his policy, premium per policy, household, all that stuff, right? So like, if he has,
I do better at cross-selling than you do, you know, stuff like that.
he does, yeah, more Google reviews, all that.
More Google reviews, yeah.
But you get what I'm saying. Like, if he has a different pool of premium or households or whatever, but this is, and then, you know, talk about, let me land your plane here, T5. What I'm trying to say is, like, how do we make those benchmarks accurately for ourselves and for our agencies?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Did that 3-minute rant that I just finished in 20 seconds make sense?
No, that's it's a fantastic question. And that's, even when I'm coaching with clients, I start with that principle. Benchmarks are great, but they're benchmarks. You are you. Let's figure out what that means. So that doesn't mean you completely toss them out the window, but having some type of a general perspective on how performance can go, again, can give you some insights on, okay, what should you be striving for, or what is reasonable for what you're trying to achieve. A lot of systems, agency management systems, will have some type of analytics that'll tell you policy count per customer, cross-sell opportunities, et cetera. So if it's a good system, you know, we all have different opinions of what that means, but there should be ways to get your own performance history to see how have you done over the last 1, 2, 3-ish years, based on even at the organizational level and maybe even down to the staffing level. And so the hard part is collecting and organizing that data in a way you can use it meaningfully. But you can still do it. Again, this isn't like a specific recommendation or endorsement, but like, I actually like Easy Links to an extent, because their pulse report, very easy to generate and digest. It has benchmarks with other agencies in their system. It gives you a couple pages of a snapshot performance view over the last 12 months. Super easy to read.
That's cool.
And you can see trends very clearly from like a company standpoint. And it gives you policy count per customer or client retention count, right? Like, all that stuff is like very easy to track. Versus some system. Yeah.
Can I just add something on that quickly before you move on from the system thing? I've talked to like 3 people. One of those people is Steven, about like finding those metrics in your own system that they're there. Like, I've been on Hawksoft collectively for like 8 years, It was like, oh, I wonder if it could do this, wonder if it could do that. Like it's all right there. One click, it's all right there. So like if you're listening to this now, like I wonder if what I have does that. It most likely does. Just find a way to do it and look into it. And I know a couple other people are like,
Right.
I didn't know my system did this.
No,
or
it's
that.
perfect. And
So I just
also
wanted to share that.
understanding too, each system might record data differently and how it saves it. So like Hawksoft, right, even your sponsor,
Right.
they have, I think, some very good analytics and book snapshot reports and things that are available. But I've heard a critique that sometimes getting historical data is not always easy. And so if you know that, well, then you have to come up with a process to save, record those historical data points so that you can either build your
Yeah.
own analytics over trend or things like that. Part of my background is actually something I use quite often, but like part of my background is working in a large agency back in the day, still to this day sometimes. Some of the larger platform systems, it's not difficult to get the data out, but they don't have great analytic dashboards. And so large agencies actually help, and they work on proprietary analytics platforms that just extract the data from the systems, and then you organize it and slice it and present it how it's relevant for you.
Mhm.
So I have extensive background in like pulling that data and generating dashboards or reports on what you're trying to measure. So again, you have benchmarks as a reference, but even knowing what you do and what's realistic for you helps you to kind of set that baseline of, okay, here's our baseline goal. Maybe here's a stretch goal. Exactly what you're saying, personal versus commercial, or North Dakota versus Florida, right? Personalized, totally different market. And
Yeah.
so understanding,
Yeah.
just knowing yourself, but collecting the data is also a discipline that many people need to kind of start to build that muscle more.
Gotcha. Colby, I want to ask you about profit margin. So for newer agencies, what is like newer agencies, like what's a good profit margin to be at? Like, is there a number you should be striving for?
Well, here's one of the main things.
It all depends.
Well, here's what influences that
Depends
answer
on the agency.
Of, again, 95% of small business is going to be either an LLC, a sole proprietor, single member, or like an LLC filing as S Corp, which is categorized as a pass-through entity where the profit of the company is directly designed to benefit the owner. And so if it's about profit margin, well, then the relevant question is, well, how much you pay yourself either from a guaranteed payment if you're an LLC, or if you're an S Corp, what's your W-2 salary, because that's going to influence your actual margin. And then the second question is, what do you actually do with your margin? So
when you calculate that margin, you include the owner's payroll.
You can, and you should. Number? And that's the question: is if you're working a job description or a role, you should be paid for that. And this is, I don't say an unpopular thought, but I'll just throw it out there. I want to get your thoughts on this. If you're a scratch or maybe a scratch plus agency, I think one of the disconnects for most people is like, I'm a producer, therefore I should get commission. But if you're an owner or manager or CEO, right, whatever the management type title is, typically that's associated with a market salary. And so whenever you started and as you're growing, have you figured out like, okay, yes, what should my salary be? Because that's going to either dictate your profit, but also that's going to dictate how much you can reinvest. And so I would say from 0 to like maybe 300 or more, a lot of times the owners, they don't think in terms of like a salary mindset. It's all the profit dollars go straight to my personal account.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's your point that we talked about that makes so much. It makes it depends on like your season of life, like you said, right? Like, are you starting this where you cannot take, you can be fine not taking a salary for 3 years because your spouse has a great job and you're fine with your life? Great. Are you starting it and your spouse doesn't work and you have to take home $1? And
when it's relative, because 20% on $100,000 in commissions is $20,000. 20% on $500,000 in commissions is $100,000. Well, that's actually 1 or 2 salaries, right? So when you think of relative compensation, I think it needs to be to your state in life, but also the state in the maturity of the agency.
That makes sense. And then how do you, I've talked to a few agencies that have discussed like how they reanalyze their salary. Like some will do it on an annual basis
Every
based
month.
off of agency performance. Some that are newer will just be like, hey, I got to replace the deck in the backyard. I'll do it now. So I'm curious, like, I guess it's different for everybody. Crap, I know the answer. But what would you say is like an efficient, good way of thinking about it?
And
like, would you advise like, hey, you should probably just do it on an annual basis because it's easier to track and manage
yeah, I would
as
say
you grow? Or
owner compensation is something that you should include in a detailed budget. So if you're making a budget for your agency, looking at your future
Okay.
production, your staff planning, those types of things, your compensation should be part of that
that
budget
makes
item.
sense.
And so set a plan, work the plan, and then every quarter, every 6 months, you evaluate your budget. You should also evaluate your own comp and if it's reasonable to make adjustments or et cetera. So like we know some people and others, I think the ones that do it well, they'll set their salary and set like maybe a predictable distribution plan, if it makes sense. And then quarterly, when like they're looking at their tax distribution or like their tax planning, they might evaluate, okay, have we earned more profit? Or have we maybe been under our budget and do I need to pivot and like maybe delay it for a month or two? So it is an evolving plan, but it starts with a plan.
Gotcha.
And that
Okay, that makes sense.
So
Yeah,
much
because
of it.
I think you get in you can get in a lot of trouble, I feel like, from a financial standpoint if you don't plan, and 1 month you take $2,000, 1 month you take
let me give
$8,000,
you
1 month you take $1,000,
no, that's fantastic.
and now you're all
Segue. Let me
over the
add this.
place.
I work with agencies unfortunately too often where if they don't have a deliberate plan and they don't operate with a decent margin, I wrote an article about this recently about risk and profit margins. And if you have too much concentration in something, or you lose a key carrier, you lose a key client, some people don't even plan their cash flow well, where if they have like a 1 or 2 or 3 month period through the year where they're actually negative operating, where like their commissions are low that month, it's just going to catch up later. Well, if you take cash out of the business before you actually have to make payroll, you actually can get in trouble. That's actually one of the number one causes people violate trust accounting, is not planning their operational cash and they take too much money out.
Oh, and then they transfer.
Yeah, and then you're
to,
prematurely taking funds out of the trust account just to make payroll. That's how it happens. And then you're trying to play catch up to try to put the money back in the trust. Well, then you're not taking money out. So right, then it just makes this crazy cycle of fear and illegal fraud, right?
Oh my God, yeah.
And so I'll stick to that point. One of the number one reasons people violate trust accounting is they don't set their own budget appropriately to measure or go through months.
Who are these people? I mean, is it the DFS that I guess looks at like who's like analyzing trust accounting? Is it like an audit?
Well,
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, I am curious. Like, how does it get caught?
Service provider, right? When you think about taxes or legal, estate, like all that type of stuff, it's a self-reporting system. And usually the only reason you get in trouble is if you do something that's a variance from that self-reporting norm, or somebody else complains.
Yeah.
Right. And so when it comes to trust accounting,
gotcha. So you'd have to be doing something really wrong. A customer would need to say, "Hey, he took my money, but never activated my policy."
The way that's found out typically is not
like
even the customer noticing. It's if they don't make the payables to the carrier, well, then the carrier issues notice of cancellation for the policy not being paid. Well, that goes to the customer. Well, then they're saying, "Well, I gave you the money. What happened?" Or if the carrier or the broker is like, "Hey, your statement is late. What's going on?" There's only one, maybe two reasons why you shouldn't make your monthly payables to a broker, right? It's not hard to figure out. And so if you're sending money late to somebody that you have a fiduciary responsibility to do so, well, that's an immediate flag that something has gone wrong. So kind of tie this back to our kind of general conversation is, and I see this. This is actually the direct example. The reason people violate trust accounting or have other issues is because they don't do their own budgeting properly. And then the hard part is once you fall into that, it's hard to dig out. So in order to avoid it, do a budget, right? Figure out how much you should take, right? Never risk customer funds or your staff payroll just because you needed to buy a boat, right? Don't do it.
Don't worry,
taking
Shawn.
those too
They're
fast.
not coming after you. Don't worry about it.
But to directly answer your question,
You
it's
can
either
say
the
what you
broker
want.
complaining.
They don't
Yeah, it's either the
listen.
broker
They don't
complaining or a
listen.
client complaining that, hey, like I did this the right way and they didn't do it right.
Yeah, man.
Hey, Colby, we got to wrap this up, but I want to ask you one last question, and it's a very open-ended question, so I apologize in advance. But for anybody who's listening, just scratch plus, we'll call it, right? What's like the number one piece of advice from a financial standpoint that you can give them, kind of no matter where they're at in the journey? Because Shawn and I talked about all the time, like you get to that 1 year, 2 year, 3 year mark, whatever, 4 year, you're like just head down. I got to write policies. I got to do this. And then, you don't budget. You don't do all these. You don't realize how much you're spending on insert whatever vendor here. But if you could give one piece of advice to someone that is under 5 years, we'll say, what would that be?
Oh, well,
Besides,
that's it.
create a budget.
Pull in other people who do things better than you. And so it might cost to do outsourcing, or it might cost to get that look, but it helps you again to kind of see around either your blinders or to think differently. And that's a cost to reduce risk, because again, if you're not doing it, then you are taking the risk of what happens if you don't do it properly. So like getting someone else to give you an opinion or a view helps to kind of like mitigate, right, some of the stuff that you are taking yourself. You just are not looking at it maybe in the best way.
You know what I love about that is I feel like we're the first people to say, well, we're not ready for that type of consultant. I'm only 3 years in. I'm not ready to pay for that type of advice. What do we tell these people that have Geico direct policies? What do we tell? Why do we tell them to come to us?
I'll say,
take a little piece of your own advice.
No, seriously, exactly. That's the analogy I use.
Colby.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for recognizing that. Because I tell people all the time, it's no different, right? You sell your house, you hire a real estate agent. You need legal representation, you get an attorney. You need tax representation, you get a CPA or an enrolled agent, right? There's a lot of things. If you don't know how to do it, the thing is, if you really knew how to do it, you could. But is it so much more efficient and helps you manage the process better? Kind of like back to the very first point we made, right? It's understanding the expectations of the process helps you to participate in the process and actually get the outcome you want.
I don't know. The way I look at it from a legal and financial standpoint in business is if I can think I can save money by not doing insert here, it's probably not a good idea to do that myself. Like, and to the point, you don't know what you don't know. You're the expert in that, not us. We're the insurance agent. You're the expert. Insert whoever here. I just think it's a great point. Like, listen to our own advice.
I'll say,
Colby, how can people get in
I'll
touch
say I take
with you?
that medicine too. Like, I just hired a new agent for my dad's company's insurance, right? Like, I've been a licensed producer. I've done account executive work. Like, I'm still not doing that myself, right? I got somebody else to do it. So, yes. Okay. How can they get in touch with me? I am very active on LinkedIn. So if you want to add me, like, great. I'm always engaging with people there. On our website, right, we have a listing of our staffing. My direct email is Allen, ALLEN at agencybrokerage.com. Or, I don't know, put up a bat signal. I'll find it. We'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, thank you for being such a good friend of the show. And,
yes, sir.
You've helped Shawn and I out with a few things on our ends, and we just really appreciate you and appreciate your support, following along, all that good stuff. So appreciate you being here and taking the time. Everybody, that's another episode of the Scratch Agency Podcast. Thanks for joining us. Do us a favor, like the show, share the show, and subscribe. But most importantly, remember to dig down deep, believe in yourself, and own your own future. We'll see you next week. Take care.